We interrupt this broadcast for a special bulletin. A small private plane, rumored to be carrying the one and only king of rock and roll, has vanished over the Pacific. Meanwhile, on a remote, uncharted desert isle, our 7 castaways are going about their day. The skipper is trying to fix the minnow, Mr. Howell is counting his money, and Gilligan is trying to teach a crab to tap dance. Little did they know their quiet island life was about to be all shook up. A mysterious figure was stumbling out of the jungle, his sequined jumpsuit torn, his legendary hair just slightly out of place. The castaways gathered around the smoking wreckage, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity.
Stay back, everyone. It could be dangerous. It might be headhunters.
Good heavens, Thurston, what is that awful racket?
But what emerged from the dense green foliage wasn't a cannibal, it was a cultural icon. He stumbled forward, brushed a palm frond from his shoulder, and in a voice that made teenage girls faint, he spoke.
Hey there, pardon me, ma'am, but you wouldn't happen to have a bottle of sarsaparilla, would you? And maybe a comb?
It was him, Elvis Presley, in the flesh. Ginger Grant's jaw dropped so hard it nearly hit the sand, her movie star instincts kicking in immediately. Mary Ann, bless her heart, simply blushed a shade of red that matched her gingham dress, completely starstruck. The professor, always the pragmatist, began analyzing the trajectory of the crash, muttering about wind shear and engine failure. But it was Gilligan who had the most profound reaction. He stared, his mouth agape, his little white hat seeming to shrink in the presence of such overwhelming coolness. He took one look at the sideburns, the swagger, the sheer, unadulterated charisma, and knew his life's purpose had just been revealed to him. He wasn't meant to be a first mate, he was meant to be a backup dancer.
Well, I'll be the king himself. Welcome aboard, or, ashore, I guess. Don't you worry, son. We'll have you off this island in no time.
Thank you very much. This is a little different from Graceland, I gotta say. But the price is right.
The stage was set for the strangest collaboration in Castaway history. Mr. Howell scoffed, adjusting his ascot. We'll see about that. I own the mineral rights to this sand, you know. Elvis would snap his fingers and Gilligan would try to snap his, only to accidentally flick himself in the eye. Elvis would do a smooth slide, and Gilligan would attempt one, only to slip on a patch of wet moss and slide headfirst into Mrs. Howell's luggage. The lesson was a symphony of slapstick failure, but through it all, Elvis was patient. He saw Gilligan not as a clumsy oaf, but as the world's most dedicated, if least talented, fan.
No, son, you're thinking too much. You gotta be cool, like this.
Undeterred, Elvis spent the next hour giving Gilligan a one-on-one lesson.
Gilligan, what are you doing to the communal sleeping quarters?
He did a slow, effortless pelvic thrust that seemed to make the very palm trees sway. Gilligan watched, mesmerized, then tried to copy it. The result was less of a smooth gyration and more of a sudden awkward lurch that sent him stumbling backward.
A backup dancer, huh? Well, the first thing you gotta learn is the signature move. It's all in the hips. You gotta let the music move you. Feel the rhythm in your soul.
Gilligan's face fell. I was hoping to be one of your backup dancers. Instead of laughing, Elvis saw the genuine admiration in Gilligan's eyes. He decided to play along, recognizing a kindred spirit of simple, unadulterated enthusiasm.
Call me Elvis, son. And that's some fancy footwork you got there. Never seen anything quite like it. What do you call that move, the falling sailor?
The very next morning, Gilligan was up before the sun, a determined look on his face. He had found a large, flat rock near the lagoon and was practicing his moves. Or what he thought were moves. It was a disastrous combination of a sailor's hornpipe, a clumsy stumble, and a bizarre hip wiggle that looked more like he was trying to shake a hornet out of his pants. He'd fashioned a makeshift microphone out of a banana and was lip-syncing passionately into it, convinced he was a natural. "A wop bop a loo bop a wop bam boom," he muttered, tripping over his own feet and landing in a heap. He was trying to capture the king's magic, but he was getting all of the jiggle and none of the grace. Elvis, out for a morning stroll, stumbled upon this bizarre spectacle. He leaned against a palm tree, a bemused smirk playing on his lips as he watched Gilligan's earnest yet utterly hopeless attempts at rock and roll stardom. Gilligan, finally noticing his idol, froze mid-wiggle, his face turning a bright, panicked crimson. "Oh, Mr. Presley, sir, I was just stretching." She was in full Hollywood producer mode, pacing back and forth on the sand, her mind racing with possibilities while Elvis just seemed to want a nap.
But think of the publicity. We can get you on the cover of Life magazine. I can see the headline now. From Heartbreak Hotel to Bamboo Bungalow. We'll need new headshots. Marianne is great with lighting, and the skipper has a certain rustic charm for security.
You've got a lot of moxie, Miss Grant, I'll give you that. But right now, I'm more concerned with finding a freshwater spring than a movie deal.
She had already drafted a contract on a large banana leaf with Berry Juice Inc., appointing herself as his new manager. Her plan was to orchestrate his triumphant return to civilization, with her, of course, taking a modest 10% finder's fee, and a co-starring role in the subsequent movie, musical about the ordeal. She was already picturing the posters. Elvis, ever the gentleman, listened patiently to Ginger's ambitious, borderline delusional pitch.
Darling, this island isn't a prison, it's a stage, a hiatus. Think of the comeback story, The King Lost and Found, it's box office gold.
Meanwhile, Ginger Grant was formulating a plan of her own. She saw Elvis not as a castaway, but as a career opportunity.
Science, Skipper. It's all just applied science.
It looks like a fruit salad exploded, Professor. Are you sure this will work?
The resonant frequencies of the coconut shell, when combined with the parabolic shape, should focus the sound waves.
The professor, with his usual boundless ingenuity, had decided to build a massive, island-wide sound system using only the materials at hand. He was turning coconuts into microphones, bamboo shoots into speaker towers, and vine-woven hammocks into acoustic dampeners. It was a feat of tropical engineering that defied all logic but his own. The professor proudly unveiled his masterpiece, the Coconut Acoustic Sonic Amplifier, or CASA for short. It was a bizarre network of hollowed-out gourds and stretched animal hides, all connected by an intricate web of vines leading back to a central microphone. A particularly large coconut shell lined with shimmering mother-of-pearl.
If we can amplify his voice, we might be able to create a sonic signal powerful enough to be picked up by passing ships or aircraft. His vocal cords are a natural resource.
While Gilligan was busy bruising his hips, the professor was hard at work in his bamboo laboratory. He saw Elvis's arrival not as a celebrity encounter, but as a scientific opportunity. The energy was infectious. Ginger and Marianne became the islandettes, swaying and singing backup vocals. The skipper, getting into the groove, started adding little drum fills. Even Mr. Howell was tapping his foot, a rare smile gracing his face. And Gilligan, bless his heart, stood with intense concentration, his eyes darting between Elvis and his triangle, waiting for his big moment. Elvis gave him the nod. Gilligan took a deep breath, swung the little metal stick, and it was perfect. For a fleeting moment, they weren't castaways. They were a band. A weird, dysfunctional, but incredibly happy band.
The warden threw a party in the county jail. The skipper's band was there and they began to wail.
He struck a chord on his own repaired guitar, and the island band kicked in. The sound was, well, unique. The turtle shells were a bit hollow, the coin shaker was slightly sharp, and the vine bass occasionally went out of tune, but it was music. Elvis's voice soared over it all, a beacon of pure talent in a sea of amateur enthusiasm.
We'll do a little number I call Jungle Jailhouse Rock.
Elvis commanded, his voice already sounding richer and fuller through the professor's coconut microphone.
All right, everybody, from the top.
With the professor's sound system complete and Ginger's managerial spirit ignited, a plan was hatched. Elvis would perform a concert, his voice amplified by the CASA, creating a sonic beacon for rescue. It was the perfect fusion of science, showmanship, and honestly, a bit of desperation. The entire island became a rehearsal stage. The Howells, surprisingly, were put in charge of costumes, using fine silk salvaged from their trunks to add a touch of glamour to the jungle chic aesthetic. Mrs. Howell even fashioned a tiny, sequined captain's hat for the skipper, much to his chagrin. Marianne, naturally, was in charge of catering, whipping up coconut cream pies for the entire crew. The musical accompaniment was a true castaway collaboration. The skipper banged on overturned turtle shells for a drum beat. Mr. Howell, after much grumbling, discovered that shaking his bamboo wallet full of coins produced a rather pleasant maraca-like sound. The professor created a makeshift bass guitar using a long piece of driftwood and taut vines, producing a surprisingly funky thump-thump sound. And Gilligan, in his new role, was given the most important job of all, playing the triangle. It was a real triangle, salvaged from the Minnow's dinner bell. All he had to do was hit it at the right time. What could possibly go wrong? But it was too late. With impeccable slapstick timing, the coconut microphone flew right into Elvis's open, singing mouth. The king of rock and roll stood there, dazed, with a coconut wedged firmly in his mouth. The music stopped. The powerful singing was replaced by a stunned silence, broken only by the gentle lapping of the waves. The yacht on the horizon, its auditory guide now gone, slowly turned and continued on its original course, disappearing back over the horizon. Rescue was gone.
Look out!
Everyone was ecstatic. Mrs. Howell was already planning a welcome party, while Mr. Howell was calculating the salvage rights for Elvis's plane. The skipper was doing a joyous jig, and Ginger was practicing her I discovered him speech for the reporters she was sure were on board. All their hopes and dreams were tied to that approaching vessel. All they had to do was keep the concert going for another 10 minutes. Elvis segued into Hound Dog, pouring every ounce of his energy into the performance, his voice a powerful lifeline pulling them back to civilization. Rescue was so close they could almost taste it. This is where Gilligan, as he so often did, found a way to turn triumph into trouble. Tasked with keeping the main power vine from getting tangled, he was doing his job with unusual diligence. But as he got caught up in the music, he started to dance. He did his clumsy hornet-in-the-pants wiggle, his feet shuffling and stumbling in time with the beat. In his excitement, he didn't notice that the main vine from the casa had looped around his ankle. With one particularly enthusiastic Elvis-inspired hip thrust, he gave the vine a tremendous yank. The entire sound system groaned in protest. The central microphone, the big, beautiful coconut, was pulled taut. It shot from its bamboo stand like a cannonball, trailing vines behind it. The coconut flew through the air in a perfect comical arc, directly toward Elvis.
They hear us. They're coming.
The grand performance was set for sunset, when the professor calculated that atmospheric conditions would be optimal for sound wave propagation. The casa was humming, the cast was in costume, and a palpable sense of hope filled the air. As Elvis launched into the opening bars of Blue Suede Shoes, his voice boomed across the lagoon, amplified 100-fold. It was working. The sound was immense, echoing off the mountains and rolling out over the vast, empty ocean. On the horizon, a tiny speck appeared. A boat! No, a yacht! It was turning toward them, drawn in by the unmistakable sound of the king. Gilligan's eyes fluttered open. He wasn't on the beach. He was in his hammock, in the communal hut. The morning sun filtered through bamboo walls. There was no Elvis, no sound system, no ruined rescue. It had all been a dream. A vivid, sequin-filled dream. He let out a long sigh, relief and disappointment. He looked down at what he was holding. He wasn't clutching a banana microphone, he was cuddling a coconut.
He sat up and looked closer at the coconut. Sometime in his sleep, or maybe the day before, he had carved a face into it. It had a lopsided grin and two big eyes. And stuck to the top, held in place with tree sap, was a large green leaf, combed back into a perfect pompadour. It was a coconut Elvis.
Morning, little buddy. You were making noise in your sleep. Sounded like you were trying to sing.
The skipper walked in, yawning and stretching.
Oh, no, Skipper, I was just dreaming.
Well, hurry up and get ready. We've got work to do if we're getting off this rock.
Gilligan nodded, but as the skipper left, he pulled out his coconut idol again, giving its leafy hair a little pat. The rescue might have been a dream, but for Gilligan, the king would live on, forever immortalized in tropical fruit.
Thank you very much.
Gilligan smiled, a goofy, innocent grin. He held the coconut up. The skipper began, his voice low and dangerous, but before the inevitable Gilligan, the scene began to shimmer, like heat haze from sand. The colors started to blur, and the skipper's voice began to warp and fade. The silence was deafening. The castaways stared, first at the disappearing yacht, then at Elvis with the coconut, and then at Gilligan. Gilligan just stood there, the vine around his ankle, pure horror on his face.